12 minutes before the hour here on DayBreak USA. This horrifying story coming out of Cleveland with the three women who have been held captive for 10 years. Now they're finally freed. But are they free? Will they be prisoners for the rest of their life because of the things that they've experienced over the last 10 years? We're joined this morning by Dr. Norman R. Klein. Dr. Norman R. Klein has been in private practice in New York and Westport, Connecticut as a clinical and forensic psychologist for more than 25 years. Dr. Klein, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and it's very nice to be with you and your listeners this morning.
Well, we appreciate you joining us this morning. The one thing that I think a lot of people are, well, there's a lot of things people are wondering. What happened, those last 10 years? How did they survive this physically and mentally? And now what's ahead? What kind of a life is ahead for these three women and even this child that came from all of this?
Well, of course, that's what we're all wondering, and we want the answers to that. We have to be very careful about speculating. After all, we've only had sketchy information from law enforcement. We've heard nothing from the doctors. We haven't had any direct contact with these now young women. They were girls at the time. And so we need to be careful about the things we say about these individuals. That said, there are generalizations we can make. I mean, this was 10 years of savage deprivation that affects every sphere of their functioning, the educational, social, medical. They were raised in squalor, and one of the things nobody's talking about is the impact that we now know is associated with interrupted sleep. I mean, that affects our metabolism, our immune system, our cognitive abilities, and it's not as if these guys were paying their light bills. So we can also assume that they're living in darkness a lot of the time. Police Chief McGrath reported that in the 10 years, as hard as this is to believe, reported that in those 10 years they were outside only a few minutes. So they were raised like beaten pets, and like beaten pets, lose all sense of self, all sense of autonomy. They're reduced to hopelessness, and the only thing they have left is a drive to survive. Now, again, each individual has different strengths and weaknesses in this regard, so we don't really know how it impacted them individually. But we do know that what needing to survive in concentration camp surroundings implies that there is that it involves submission and compliance, which is maintained out of fear and even starvation. And you're reduced to having to make this perverse bond with your captors. Maybe you remember what has become called the Stockholm Syndrome,
right,
in 1973, or even the case of Patty Hearst, who wound up being able to flee but aligning herself with her captors in criminal ways.
And speaking of that, how about the cases that we do know of? The Elizabeth Smart, she was held captive for 9 months, or the J.C. Dugard, who was held captive for 17 years. Do we know
exactly
how they're kind of transforming into real life?
There was some exposure to them last night peripherally, and the snapshot is that they look great and they're sounding cogent, but there's no doubt that there is lingering and could continue to linger deficits in terms of their social functioning, in terms of their ability to affiliate with people, in terms of their default way of being in the world, being one of distrust. They're fine when they're around a loving family, as these girls might be, and I say girls because I'm referring to my only images of them when they were literally children. They're surrounded by loving, caring family, a supportive community, but they're going to need intensive therapy from experts who have experience in this exact victim population. And it would be wonderful if they could identify either in vivo or online a support group of people who have been through this and who might be able to guide them better in a way that only that population can understand.
Is there, you think of this, is there hope that they could ever marry and have normal families, or is there a complete lack of trust for all men or anybody in authority or anything like that? I mean,
well, certainly in the short term, there are going to be disordered in that way. They've been derailed educationally. They've been derailed socially. So that's going to have to come very gradually,
right,
very gently. The degree to which they can lead fulfilling lives, I think, you mentioned of Elizabeth Smart and Tracy Dugard and Sean Hornbeck, who had the support systems I mentioned before, are functioning, at least on the surface, in adequate ways. But I hypothesize that none of these people are as fully functioning as they would have been had they been permitted to develop normally during the critical periods of development that they were that were stolen from them, that was snuffed out for them.
Well, Dr. Norman Klein, we thank you so much for your insight this morning, and we can just we all need to pray for these victims this morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.